Who was Baba Anuika, the elderly woman behind the staggering figure of 150 murders? Delve into the chilling journey of Serbia's most infamous serial killer, a tale that challenges our perceptions of age, cunning, and brutality. The legend unveiled: Baba Anuika's early life. In the annals of criminal history, few figures are as paradoxically captivating and horrifying as Baba Anuika, the elderly woman who became Serbia's most notorious serial killer. Born in the Banat region of Romania in 1838, her story begins in an era where the lines between folklore and fact blur intriguingly, setting the stage for a life shrouded in darkness and mystery. Anuika's early years offer no immediate signs of the infamy that would later envelop her name. Unlike many of her murderous counterparts, whose childhoods are often marred by abuse, neglect, or extreme poverty, Anuika's upbringing was, by all accounts, prosperous. Her father, a wealthy cattle breeder, ensured that his daughter wanted for nothing. Moving to Vladimir Vakš, a village in Serbia, she was afforded an education, a privilege in those times. Attending a private school alongside children from similarly affluent families. Here, Anuika was just another girl, the daughter of a rich family, with no apparent eccentricities or predispositions to the cruel future that awaited. Yet, beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary existence, the seeds of an extraordinary life were being sown. Anuika's intellectual curiosity, particularly in the sciences, was evident from a young age. This passion for knowledge, coupled with her linguistic talents — she reportedly spoke 5 languages fluently — hints at a mind that was both keen and adaptable. It was a mind that, under different circumstances, might have contributed significantly to society. Instead, it veered down a path marked by betrayal, heartbreak, and a descent into darkness. The turning point in Anuika's life came during her early 20s, not through any single dramatic event, but through a series of personal tragedies that would shape her worldview. The first of these was her ill-fated love affair with a young Austrian military officer. The relationship, steeped in the romantic idealism of youth, ended in abandonment, leaving Anuika heartbroken. But the true catalyst for change was not the loss of love itself, but the aftermath. A diagnosis of syphilis, contracted from the officer, marked the beginning of Anuika's transformation from a woman scorned to a harbinger of death. The disease, incurable and stigmatizing at the time, likely played a pivotal role in Anuika's burgeoning misanthropy, particularly towards men. It was a hatred that festered in the shadows of her being, growing in intensity with each passing year. Yet rather than succumbing to despair, Anuika channeled her energies into the world of chemistry and science, areas she had shown an aptitude for in her youth. Her intelligence, once a beacon of potential, became a tool for malevolence. Anuika's marriage to a man 2 decades her senior, a farm owner, and the subsequent birth of their children could have offered a chance at normalcy, a return to the innocence of her early years. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The death of all but one of her children in infancy, followed by the loss of her husband after 2 decades of marriage, plunged Anuika into a despair from which there was no return. Loneliness became a constant companion, and in its embrace, Anuika found solace in her studies, retreating further into the depths of her intellect and away from the world. Turn to darkness, the catalysts. Baba Anuika's descent into the abyss of murder and mayhem was not a sudden plunge, but rather a gradual slide, greased by a series of pivotal moments and personal tragedies. Each of these instances, woven into the fabric of her life, contributed to her transformation into Serbia's most feared elderly serial killer. To fully comprehend the catalyst behind her dark journey, we must examine the tapestry of her life's most defining and tragic events. The first and perhaps most significant catalyst was Anuika's encounter with venereal disease, contracted from a young Austrian military officer she had fallen deeply in love with. This betrayal and subsequent illness marked a turning point, not only in her personal life, but in the very essence of her being. The stigma and physical toll of syphilis, coupled with the emotional devastation of abandonment, ignited a deep-seated resentment towards men, a flame that would only grow fiercer with time. But Anuika's story is not merely one of personal vendettas. It is also a narrative deeply entrenched in the societal and cultural milieu of her time. living in a period where women were largely subservient to men and had limited autonomy. Anuika's plight and subsequent actions can also be viewed through the lens of a woman rebelling against the constraints imposed upon her gender. Her intellect and education, rare for women of her era, set her apart, yet also isolated her from traditional female roles and expectations. This isolation, both intellectual and emotional, may have further fueled her disdain for societal norms and the roles men played in enforcing them. Another critical catalyst in Anuika's transformation was the loss of her children and husband. The death of all but one of her children in infancy plunged her into a deep well of sorrow, a pain that was compounded by the subsequent death of her husband. These losses stripped Anuika of the roles that society valued most in a woman, those of a mother and wife. Bereft of her family and the social identity they provided, she turned increasingly inward, finding solace and purpose in her studies of chemistry and botany. It was in this solitude that Anuika's fascination with poisons and their effects began to take a morbid turn, transforming from a scientific interest into a deadly obsession. As Anuika delved deeper into the study of toxicology, she began to experiment with creating potions and poisons, a pursuit that was at once an intellectual challenge and a darkly empowering endeavor. This power, derived from her ability to control life and death through her concoctions, offered a perverse form of retribution against the societal and personal injustices she had endured. Her role as a healer in the community served as the perfect cover for her nefarious activities, allowing her to test and refine her deadly skills under the guise of medicinal care. Anuika's transition from a grieving widow to a serial killer was also facilitated by the context of her times. The early 20th century was a period of great turmoil and change, with the aftermath of wars, shifting borders, and societal upheaval providing ample cover for her crimes. In a world where death was a constant presence, her victims' disappearances could be easily obscured and suspicions deflected. The chaotic backdrop of her era enabled Anuika to operate with a degree of impunity that might have been impossible in a more stable and scrutinizing environment. The art of poison, an unusual methodology. Baba Anuika's legacy of death is not merely a chronicle of murder, but a dark testament to the application of science in the service of evil. Her methodology, rooted in an in-depth knowledge of chemistry and botany, reveals a chillingly methodical approach to killing that set her apart from other serial killers. This chapter delves into the art and science behind Anuika's use of poison, an unusual methodology that underscores both her intellect and her malice. At the heart of Anuika's lethal practice was her profound understanding of natural and chemical poisons. Unlike brute force or weaponry, poison allowed for stealth and subtlety, aligning with societal perceptions of how a woman, especially of her age, could enact violence. Anuika exploited these stereotypes to their fullest, crafting poisons that were not only effective but also untraceable to the untrained eye. Her choice of poisons was vast and varied, reflecting a deep exploration of toxicology. Anuika utilized a range of substances, from arsenic and belladonna to more exotic toxins derived from plants native to the Balkan region. Each choice was deliberate, chosen for its availability, efficacy, and the symptoms it induced. Anuika's poisons often mimicked natural diseases, leading many to attribute her victims' deaths to illness rather than foul play. Anuika's scientific approach extended beyond mere selection. She tailored doses meticulously, considering factors such as the victim's weight, age, and health. This customization ensured that her poisons acted with precision, maximizing lethality while minimizing risk of detection. Her method was one of trial and error, refined over years of study and experimentation. Anuika kept detailed notes of her concoction's effects, using her victims as unwitting subjects in her morbid research. The preparation of these poisons was conducted in Anuika's own home, transformed into a laboratory of death. Here, amidst vials and botanical extracts, Anuika worked with the meticulousness of a scientist, grinding, distilling, and mixing her ingredients. The mundane act of cooking or gardening became, in her hands, a process of crafting death. Anuika's poisons were often administered under the guise of medicine or food, exploiting her role as a community healer. Victims, trusting in her knowledge and benevolence, unknowingly ingested their demise. This betrayal of trust was a hallmark of Anuika's methodology, reflecting a calculated cruelty and manipulation that magnified the horror of her crimes. Moreover, Anuika's use of poison spoke to a deeper psychological warfare. Her methods induced a slow, agonizing death, allowing her to exert control over her victims in their final hours. This control was not merely physical, but psychological, a manifestation of her power and revenge against those she perceived had wronged her. The slow nature of poisoning also allowed Anuika the satisfaction of watching her plans unfold, a perverse form of gratification in her victim's suffering. The untraceability of poison, coupled with the limited forensic science of the time, played into Anuika's hands. The subtle symptoms and delayed onset of many toxins made it difficult for authorities to link the deaths to foul play. This obscurity was instrumental in Anuika's long undetected spree of murder, showcasing her cunning in exploiting the limitations of contemporary medicine and law enforcement. Anuika's methodologies also reflect a disturbingly personal touch in her crimes. Poison, by its nature, requires knowledge of the victim, intimate details that Anuika often gleaned under the pretense of providing care. This intimacy between murderer and victim adds a chilling layer to her acts, a twisted inversion of the healer's role to do no harm. The Shadows of Banat, Victims and Methods. Baba Anuika, the elderly serial killer whose name sent shivers down the spine of the Banat region, left behind a legacy of fear and mystery. Her crimes, marked by a chilling precision and cruelty, offer a glimpse into the psyche of one of Serbia's most enigmatic figures. This chapter delves into the profiles of her victims, her motivations for selecting them, and the societal impact of her heinous acts. The spectrum of Anuika's victims was broad, yet there was a method to her madness. Predominantly, her victims were men, often those who, in her eyes, represented the societal injustices and personal betrayals she had endured. These men varied in age and social standing, from young soldiers seeking to evade conscription to older husbands whom wives wished to rid themselves of. This choice of victims was not arbitrary. It was a twisted form of retribution, a way for Anuika to exert control and punish those she deemed deserving of her wrath. Anuika's motivations were complex, rooted in a deep-seated animosity towards men and a desire to empower women in a patriarchal society. However, her actions were not driven by any noble cause. Rather, they were the manifestations of her personal vendettas and psychological scars. Her use of poison was a calculated choice, allowing her to maintain a facade of innocence while committing her crimes in the shadows. Her methods were sinisterly intimate. Anuika often masqueraded as a healer, exploiting her knowledge of medicine and chemistry to concoct deadly poisons. She would administer these toxins under the guise of remedies or potions, preying on the trust and desperation of her victims and their families. This betrayal of trust was a hallmark of her modus operandi, making her crimes all the more appalling. The societal impact of Baba Anuika's crimes was profound. In a region already steeped in superstition and folklore, her actions only served to heighten the sense of fear and mistrust within the community. Rumors of a witch in the Banat region who could concoct potions to cure or kill became widespread, blurring the lines between myth and reality. Anuika's reputation as the Bonnet Witch was cemented, a moniker that evoked both fear and fascination. The discovery of her crimes brought a wave of paranoia and hysteria, as people began to suspect one another of similar deeds. Trust in traditional medicine and local healers eroded as the populace grappled with the realization that someone among them had used their knowledge for malevolent purposes. Anuika's actions also sparked a broader discourse on the role of women in society, challenging the stereotypes of women as passive and nurturing figures. Moreover, her crimes led to increased scrutiny and changes in the legal and forensic practices of the time. Authorities were compelled to develop better methods of detecting poison and investigating suspicious deaths, marking the beginning of a more scientific approach to crime solving in the region. The psychological impact on the families of the victims was devastating. The slow, agonizing nature of the deaths caused by Anuika's poisons left families in prolonged distress, watching helplessly as their loved ones suffered. The subsequent revelation that these deaths were the result of deliberate acts of murder added a layer of trauma as the families grappled with the knowledge that their trust had been fatally betrayed. Anuika's choice of victims and her methods reveal a darkly intelligent mind, one that operated with a chilling logic and efficiency. Her ability to manipulate, deceive, and kill without arousing suspicion speaks to her cunning and mastery of her craft. Yet it also underscores the depths of her malevolence, a malevolence that left an indelible mark on the Banat region and beyond. The Witch of Banat: Myths and Reality. In the rich tapestry of Serbian folklore, few figures are as enigmatic and chilling as Baba Anuika, known infamously as the Banat Witch. Her life and deeds have transcended the mere facts of her crimes, weaving her into the fabric of local myths and legends. Yet in the shadowy realm between myth and reality, distinguishing the truth about Anuika becomes a complex task. This chapter endeavors to separate the woven tales of the Witch of Banat from the stark truths of her existence, shedding light on both the public perception and the realities of her life. The nickname Banat Witch conjures images of a malevolent figure, shrouded in the dark arts and capable of unspeakable evil. This moniker, while evocative, is a distillation of Anuika's notoriety into a form that fits traditional narratives of witchcraft and wrongdoing. In reality, Anuika's witchcraft was not the summoning of dark forces, but rather the application of her scientific knowledge to concoct lethal poisons. Her reputation as a witch reflects less about her actual practices and more about the societal need to categorize her actions within a familiar framework of evil. Myths surrounding Anuika often depict her as possessing supernatural powers, able to curse and heal with a mere glance or word. These tales, while fantastical, speak volumes about the public's attempt to rationalize her ability to kill undetected for so long. The idea that Anuika could manipulate life and death with potions was, to many, as unfathomable as it was terrifying, leading to the embellishment of her story with elements of the supernatural. Public perception of Baba Anuika was undoubtedly influenced by the cultural context of the time. In a period where superstition was rampant and understanding of science was limited, Anuika's knowledge of chemistry and botany was easily misconstrued as witchcraft. This misunderstanding was further fueled by her role as a healer, a role that, when perverted by her murderous actions, seemed to confirm the worst fears about women who strayed from societal norms. The reality of Anuika's life and crimes, however, is no less disturbing for its lack of supernatural elements. Her methodical approach to murder, her exploitation of societal roles, and her deep knowledge of poisons paint a picture of a woman who was far more dangerous for her intelligence and cunning than any fictional witch could be. The real horror lies not in imagined dark arts, but in the very human capacity for malice and manipulation. Separating myth from reality also involves examining the impact of Anuika's crimes on her community. The fear she instilled was very real, affecting the lives of those around her in profound ways. Families were torn apart, trust in traditional healing was eroded, and the fabric of the community was irrevocably altered. The nickname Banat Witch thus became a symbol of this fear, a collective embodiment of the community's nightmares. Furthermore, the lore surrounding Baba Anuika serves as a mirror, reflecting societal attitudes towards women, knowledge, and the unknown. Anuika challenged the boundaries of her gender and her age, defying expectations, and in doing so, became an object of both fear and fascination. Her story is a testament to the power of narratives to shape perceptions of reality, casting her both as a cautionary tale and as a dark hero rebelling against societal constraints. In the years following Anuika's crimes, the distinction between the myths and the realities of her life has become increasingly blurred. What remains clear, however, is the indelible mark she has left on the cultural consciousness. The Banat Witch has transcended the person of Anuika, becoming a legend that speaks to the universal themes of fear, power, and the thin line between genius and madness. Legacy of a serial killer, reflections and contemporary impact. The dark saga of Baba Anuika, the Banat Witch, extends far beyond the immediate aftermath of her crimes, casting long shadows over the fields of criminal profiling, forensic science, and popular culture. Her legacy, rooted in a series of actions that shocked and bewildered society, has had a profound and lasting impact, shaping modern approaches to understanding and investigating criminal behavior. Baba Anuika's case stands as a pivotal study in the evolution of criminal profiling. In a time when the concept of a female serial killer was virtually unheard of, her actions challenged prevailing stereotypes and forced law enforcement and criminologists to reconsider their assumptions about who could commit such heinous acts. Anuika defied the typical profile of a murderer. Her age, gender, and social role as a healer contradicted the expected image of a violent criminal. This anomaly prompted a deeper exploration into the psychological motivations behind serial killings, expanding the scope of criminal profiling to include a wider array of potential suspects. Anuika's case underscores the importance of looking beyond surface appearances, emphasizing the need for a more nuanced understanding of the complex interplay between societal roles, personal history, and criminal behavior. Perhaps one of the most significant contributions of Anuika's legacy is the advancements she inadvertently spurred in the field of forensic science. The challenge of detecting her subtle method of murder, poisoning, highlighted the limitations of contemporary forensic techniques and catalyzed improvements in toxicology and chemical analysis. Anuika's use of poisons drove home the necessity for scientific rigor and innovation in crime investigation, leading to the development of more sophisticated methods for detecting and analyzing toxic substances. Her case became a cornerstone in the history of forensic science, illustrating the critical role that scientific evidence plays in solving crimes and securing convictions. It also emphasized the importance of forensic expertise in courtrooms, changing how evidence was presented and perceived in legal proceedings. Beyond the realms of law enforcement and science, Baba Anuika's story has permeated popular culture, becoming a subject of fascination, horror, and intrigue. Her transformation into the Banat Witch has inspired books, films, and folklore, contributing to the mythos of the female serial killer. Anuika's legacy in popular culture reflects society's complex relationship with crime and punishment, embodying our deepest fears and the morbid curiosity that surrounds acts of profound evil. Her story raises questions about morality, justice, and the nature of evil, inviting reflection on the human capacity for cruelty and the societal frameworks that attempt to contain it. The portrayal of Anuika in media and folklore also serves as a lens through which we can examine societal attitudes towards women, power, and deviance. By simultaneously demonizing and mythologizing her, popular culture navigates the tension between condemnation and fascination, offering insights into the ways in which gender and age influence perceptions of criminality. Today, the legacy of Baba Anuika continues to influence the fields of criminal justice and forensic science, serving as a reminder of the importance of adopting a multidisciplinary approach to crime investigation. Her case exemplifies the need for continuous dialogue between science, psychology, and law enforcement in order to adapt to the ever-evolving nature of criminal behavior. Furthermore, Anuika's story prompts ongoing discussions about the treatment of women in history and the justice system, challenging us to confront our biases and assumptions.